For a moment of silence for September 11th, that recognition we had yesterday. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Attleboro School Committee, September 12th, 2016. So your notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. Before we get into the items above it on the agenda today, I'm going to take one item out of order. That's item 1 on our business agenda, Attleboro Public Schools Foundation. We have a lot of members, or I should say several members from the community that have joined us for that, and will be needing to leave early. So I'm going to bring them up, and at this point I'd like to ask David Murphy, Scott Coleman, and Lisa Nelson to join us. As they're getting settled in, they're going to give us a very detailed explanation of who they are and what they're planning to do over the next several months. But just for background, this is a result of communications I've had with the administration, the community members, and the foundation over the last several months. What I think is going to be a very important project and important work to be done by this committee. As I think you'll see, they're going to be putting in a lot of work on behalf of the community. So I thank them now, and I'm sure we'll thank them again. Mr. Murphy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be with each of you tonight. And as Chairman Withers mentioned, we're joined by a number of other individuals who will be taking part in this project over the next several months that we're going to talk about tonight. So while Mrs. Nelson and Mr. Coleman are with me at the table tonight, Ms. Mendez, Mr. Singer, and Ms. Scott have also joined us tonight, and a number of others are watching at home. And so we will, the committee has received an outline, and it's publicly available as to the participants and the rationale behind the group that has been assembled to take on this project. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight in terms of who this group is and why they have volunteered to do this work, and why we feel it's so important for both the Attleboro Public Schools and for the community at large. I'll start just briefly saying, because I know that in the weeks and months ahead there will be further discussion about the Attleboro Public Schools Foundation and the mission that was imposed upon the Attleboro Public Schools Foundation to build reciprocal partnerships between 3 targeted constituencies: area businesses, Attleboro Public Schools alumni, and Attleboro Public Schools retirees. And I know that the committee will remember vividly the discussions that took place in recent years about how, by targeting those 3 distinct constituencies and the synergy that has the potential to yield, the district can advance its strategic goal of building greater external relationships that will benefit current and future students. But like all of the objectives that the school system and this school committee and are pursuing, there's an awareness, I think, that that work, while it certainly must go on and will go on, there are inherent restraints to advancing an ambitious educational agenda when the district is grappling with the financial challenges that it is. So in future weeks and months, I suspect you'll hear about some of the work that has already gone in, and it really has started in earnest last year, about some of the different initiatives to build those types of partnerships. Some of those are concentrated at the high school, some of those in the superintendent's office, and I know the superintendent is eager to discuss with you those initiatives, particularly places, which is, I think, something that's going to be a particularly important endeavor. And I will leave that to Mr. Sawyer on a different day to to liven the discussion with. I think that would be something the community would like to hear about.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, I know that you do. So, moving to the more immediate task, the financial challenges that the district is currently facing are at this point well understood and well documented. And what this committee is endeavoring to do in the coming months is essentially to commission a comprehensive report that will seek to answer two questions. And they're referred to in this presentation as the overarching questions. The first one is part of a hypothesis that we begin this project, and frankly that has been discussed with this school committee, the previous school committee, and frankly the school committee before the previous one, which is that the hypothesis that there's a structural financial deficit plaguing the Attleboro Public Schools. And the report will essentially defend and explain that proposition. And that question, if you were to think of it sort of as what is the distinction between a structural financial deficit and just a bad year financially, is a bad year financially is when, for whatever reason, the state allocation goes down unexpectedly, and there are things that the school system would like to do to benefit students, and that can't be done. A structural financial deficit is when the district sees a prolonged period, essentially a decade or more, in which services regress, in which there are multiple years of workforce reductions, and where in order to achieve the fundamental goals of the school system and to continue the progress that's necessary in order to offer students a 21st century education, it can't be done with this, the current structure of the budget. So again, while the goal is to answer that question and to break that up, and I'll do that momentarily, and to determine what the implications are of a structural financial deficit, I do think there's a due diligence responsibility of sorts to truly defend that idea and understand that when people use the term live within your means or live within your budget, they have to understand what that means given the budgetary structure. That at some point, if there's a hole in the boat, you can't just tell the captain to keep paddling, and as long as with enough will, there won't be a problem. At some point, you have to fix the hole. The second question is what are the strategies available to resolve that structural financial deficit, and that will discuss what are the implications of the variety of strategies that are available, and we'll sort of see what that means as we begin to break this up. To go to that first question as to what is the structural deficit and why does it exist, there's the outline that we have in the discussions that we've had over the past couple of months have essentially broken this up into 6 sections. It's conceivable it could come back to you with 5 or 7 or 5.5, I suppose. But essentially, we think these are the main ideas that will need to be addressed. One, is there a structural deficit? Second, why does that matter? And that's something that I know has been discussed in this room and a great deal in recent years as to the impact that on the community at large, that what happens when your school system's budget is essentially broken, what led to it. And I believe it was Mrs. Nelson and I were speaking at one point about how, depending on your perspective, you can say that this is a 40-year history going back to a ballot initiative in the early 80s. It is a 25-year issue going back to a major legislative reform in the early 90s, or a 13-year issue when the state began to prioritize differently and you began to see reductions both in unrestricted local aid and in Chapter 70 funds. Whether you're in the 13-year camp, the 25-year camp, or the 40-year camp, the point is this problem has been coming for a long time and it's been growing for a long time. And another distinction between a structural financial deficit and just a bad year is that it's a compounding problem and it can get worse and its consequences get worse, which is why there's been as much discussion as there has been. To explain the local funding formula and what those implications are at the local level, the municipal capacity and the degree to which the community can be expected to contribute at the local level, and then the school department's fiscal management, because one of the responsibilities of the school committee is to ensure that there is sound fiscal stewardship, and that regardless of whether the money is essentially exactly what we believe we need to advance educational objectives, or whether it's short, or it's usually not, we're usually not overspending, but there is a responsibility to make sure that every penny is spent wisely and in the interest of the community at large, and that has to be discussed as well. The second part, the comparison to how other communities have responded, that's a critical piece. I think oftentimes when we discuss these issues, we can get lost and think that we're the only community that are dealing with these issues. That leads, frankly, to flawed conclusions. It was, I believe, in August of 2015 where there was representation from the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center, which addressed the school committee, talking about how this is a statewide issue, and every community at some level is grappling with this. Some communities are structured in a way where they're frankly they can deal with it in ways that it's essentially easier. The potential strategies available, again, there are many strategies available. None of them are easy. And then what are the actual implications of whether or not we resolve this or not? I know, or at least I anticipate, that there are always questions with regard to the timeline. This is a rough timeline that our group has discussed over the summer as we've brought the committee together. And right now we're beginning a research and writing phase. This is, as you know, in many ways a continuation of discussion that's taking place in this room and throughout the community. But we have a obligation to talk not just in terms of what we know or what we think we know or what we feel, but there needs to be real research, and the conclusions that we draw need to be backed up with evidence and substance. So that's why this will take some time. The drafts will begin to circulate, I hope, throughout the month of November. Part of the reason we've assembled a diverse committee is to make sure we can have as many different perspectives as possible, doing the work, checking the work, and then checking the work again. And then we would anticipate a series of public presentations as we begin to pull together the preliminary findings, both to this body and to the community at large through a series of public forums in which we would have the opportunity to put the type of the work that we're putting together through a final round of vetting and hopefully a healthy level of skepticism so that we can determine that we've done right by the community. And the hope would be by February of 2017 to publish the report. We'll talk momentarily about, I just want to be very clear, we will not have these schools' budgetary challenges solved by February of 2017. I suppose there are always variables that could change, but I'm confident in the assertion that our financial difficulties will not be resolved by February of 2017. But it would be the hope that we would have a comprehensive data collection in which we would be able to explain to the community what the potential options are going forward, so those deliberations can begin in earnest. Just to go through a few bullet points, it's as important, I think, to understand what the committee will not do as to what the committee will do. The committee will prepare a comprehensive, substantive, evidence-based report as to the existence of the structural financial deficit and the strategies behind it. This committee will not advocate for a particular strategic remedy. This is not an override committee. This is not a committee to advocate for a particular solution. It's a committee to hopefully set the table so that we as a community can have a discussion as to what our options are. We will present multiple methods, beginning with this body and then going forward. Another big thing that we will not do in the coming months is discuss or debate this work via social media. I'm aware, I know this committee is aware of the increasingly pivotal role that social media plays in our public discourse. And it's a important way in which citizens can involve themselves in discussions that they have every right to contribute to and be involved with. This type of work that we are doing, in order to provide a comprehensive and evidence-based analysis of these issues, we cannot be engaging in premature discussions and sacrificing our objectivity in the course of doing that. And so, while I expect that the public discussion regarding the difficulties that the school system is facing and the implications for the community at large will continue in the months ahead, the individuals who are putting their names on this report and doing this work in the coming months will not be participating in those forums. We will, as I said, be soliciting feedback from the work in the later months, and we will hopefully be incorporating that work into our findings and into the report. But we can't do that on an ongoing basis. And then, in some ways, most importantly, when this work is done, work being the report, not the work of fixing the budget, this foundation will go back to the mandate that you have given it, which is to build reciprocal partnerships between the alumni community, the retirees, and the business community, so that synergy can develop into greater external partnerships across the board. So the contributors report, I said Mrs. Nelson and Mr. Coleman, who I'll ask to address the committee in a moment, are two representatives of a very diverse group of stakeholders that include Attleboro residents with a very, I would describe as a diverse array of professional experience working in both the public sector and the private sector in leadership roles involving large, complex organizations. We've also retained the services of three individuals who work in a professional capacity, three school and municipal finance experts who are not Attleboro residents, but who will be, we will work with them as part of the vetting, editing process, and frankly, they'll offer a lot of help with the research as well. And those bios are also available to you. Those are the folks. And as I said, Ms. Nelson, Mr. Coleman, and I are happy to take your questions, but I did want to, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right with you, give both Mr. Coleman and Ms. Nelson the opportunity to address the committee.
Absolutely.
My name is Scott Coleman. I've lived in Attleboro for coming up on 15 years next month with my wife, Carrie. We have 3 kids, 2 at Wamsutta, 1 at Studley. So I just want to touch on 2 things. One is the importance of education, which you all know and parents watching on TV know. And the second is building a legacy for going forward. So I am literally and figuratively a product of public education. I grew up in upstate New York. My dad started off as a biology teacher, went to be the department head, vice principal, principal, assistant superintendent, and superintendent. So I've understood the importance of education throughout my whole life. I have taken that education as a key to opportunities in front of me. I went to Northeastern University, graduated from there in 1993, and worked for a couple years, then realized I needed to get an advanced degree to be where I wanted to be. So I went to North Carolina State University, got my PhD there, continued my education at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, and have been working in the pharmaceutical industry for the past 15 years. So we all understand that education is the key to opportunities in front of us and for our kids. So I'm not a second-generation Attleboro resident or third or fourth, and I know there are several in the community. And we need to ensure the legacy going forward that the school is able to provide the education. So if my kids decide to come back to live in Attleboro, that they want to because of the education system. So I am honored to be part of this committee, and thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Nelson?
My name is Lisa Nelson. I am a long-time, all my life, resident of the city of Attleboro. I went to Farmers School, Willett School, Brennan, when it was a junior high school, and Attleboro High School. Graduated in 1972 and attended Wheaton College, and when I graduated from Wheaton, I actually became an elementary school teacher here in Attleboro, and Diane was one of my students at Bliss School. I taught 5th grade, so I taught in the Attleboro school system for 7 years. Then stayed home with 3 children, all of whom went through this school system as well and went on to great careers, which is wonderful. So fast forward, my job right now is I work for Congressman Joe Kennedy. I run his Attleboro office, which has nothing to do with why I am here tonight, but just to let you know what I am doing now. But what I did want to draw your attention to is I've always been very happy to answer the call when it has been given to me. And it was so great that Dave called me. That and the fact that he graduated with my son Paul from Attleboro High School, which was a minor detail.
Mumble
but
that here,
anyway,
too.
we'll mumble that here too. But I was also privileged to serve on the Comprehensive Plan Committee for the City of Attleboro, which was adopted in 2012 by the Municipal Council on June 5th, 2012. And at that time, I headed up the Public Safety Committee because I was a fire commissioner for the City of Attleboro for 17 years. But as part of that Comprehensive Plan Committee, there was also an Education School Committee as part of that, which was headed up by Rich Ranoni. And I was thinking about that when I was talking to Dave about about that plan. And I thought it would be wise to tell you that you are right in conformance with what that plan had mentioned. So if you don't mind, I have right here Goal 17, which was for the schools at that time, and that plan that was accepted by the Municipal Council. And goal number 17 was to provide the necessary resources, financial and otherwise, to support the educational programs established by the superintendent of schools and the school committee. And policy number 1 was to ensure funding stability, curricula stability, and quality in the public education system. Under policy number 1, the proposals were to explore all potential avenues to increase funding, including grants, tax increases, tax overrides, debt exclusions, or formation of an educational foundation. To adopt a policy to maintain consistency and stability in school curricula from year to year. To provide a high-quality public education system by keeping pace with programmatic and personnel needs, and to expand, upgrade school space to keep pace with need. That was just one of the policies underneath. So I just thought it would be appropriate to bring to your attention that you are right in conformance with what the city of Attleboro had decided were its goals for education in general. So thank you very much for allowing us to be part of this committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to say again that I'm grateful to Mr. Singer, Ms. Scott, and Ms. Mendez also for joining us, and for the other members who will be contributing their time in the coming weeks and months.
I have a couple questions, and I'm sure committee
I hope everyone, because I've been before boards before, and sometimes there aren't as many questions, so I really hope that there are some.
But one thing I wanted to say before opening it up for questions is that, I think that the fact that this work, collecting the data, preparing a report, that it be done by an independent committee, not elected officials, not certainly school committee members, is very important. The community is going to have to make, will have to continue to make difficult decisions about what it wants to do financially for the schools and for the city as well in the coming years. And I think, the fact that it's not politicians putting the report together will lend some credence to it. So I thank the 5 of you that are here, and your compatriots the 6 of you that are here, your compatriots for putting the time in, because it is a very aggressive timeline and a lot of work. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one brief comment on that. One of the challenges with taking on this work is that it's an enormously complex problem, and to be able to understand the landscape of the issues that you're dealing with, and then just try to develop a direction and move in that direction requires a diverse set of skills and, frankly, a diverse set of knowledge. And so what we attempted to do was people like Dr. Coleman, and I apologize if I messed that up earlier, and individuals who have served in positions of government, like myself, Mr. Lepper, that we tried to bring that diverse perspective together, so that we could both benefit from the sort of unencumbered view of one who has not served in public office, but also the perspective of someone who, and I've tried to come up with a term better than someone who knows where the bodies are buried, but I haven't found one yet, so I'll say that for the time being. And I think that's a necessary point. I appreciate you bringing it up.
One question that I had is the first question, part 1. Does a structural financial deficit exist? It seems, and please confirm that I'm correct, or correct me if I'm wrong, that one question, it seems like there is you believe you have an answer to that question, but the other questions not so much.
Yeah, I would say that for those of us who have been immersed in this for some time, all of us have ideas, but I think our responsibility in this report is to essentially prove those ideas and demonstrate through evidence the things that exist. There are some things where the evidence is so overwhelming that we can easily skip over that point. But I would say that your assertion is correct, that we begin with the hypothesis that there is a structural financial deficit that is compounding and has been growing over time. If it turns out that there's another problem, I promise that we will report back to the committee with great haste and probably adjourn our work sooner than we expect. But I suspect that that will not be the case.
Good. Mr. Larson?
I had another question first, but to your comment that you just made, I would challenge you to prove yourself even if you make the assumption that you know what the answer is.
I agree. I think that's
because
necessary.
You'd be surprised how many times life will challenge us in one direction. We'll be surprised. Going back to the slide where what this will and won't be,
Yep.
when I was reviewing this, the second and third bullet point, because of the size of the committee and the bias that anytime you put a committee together, you have bias in a committee. Your committee's going to have a challenge controlling the second and third bullet points there. Because they, to a certain extent, almost contradict each other. So,
Yeah, I'd just like to respond briefly.
Sure.
I think that there will be no endorsement of this, of any strategic remedy here. And I think that's critical because I don't think, at some point, the community does have to have a honest discussion, a deliberation over how exactly do we address these. And there's options for addressing the problems that are facing the school system and therefore the community vary very widely. And we see our responsibility as laying out those potential options and then allowing that to help inform the discussion that comes next. But the individuals who have agreed to participate in this understand what the charge is and what the charge is not. And the charge is not to endorse or advocate for a particular solution. It may well be the case that after those potential remedies are put before the community, that the resolution is that we need to adjust our expectations and that we have to understand that education is not going to play the role that some believe it should play or that perhaps it does play in other communities. And that is a resolution. Essentially, it is saying that what we see as a structural deficit is just the way the budget operates. And I think that needs to be put out on the table, and we need to explain what the implications of that would be.
very good.
But it's a challenge.
Oh, jumped right out at me.
Mr. Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, welcome back, David. I knew you couldn't stay away for too long. I'm very glad to see you back.
I could have. I definitely could have.
First of all, what an impressive group you put together here. I mean, these are very community-minded individuals. I think every single one of them, and they've all done a lot for the city. So, first of all, from my heart, thank you guys very much. This is very important. To piggyback on what Bill said, I appreciate they're not going to advocate for a specific strategy or a remedy, but if you find out that it is a funding shortage, wherever it is, can we expect some type of estimate of financial dollars that it would take to get us where we feel we should be?
I think that's an important part of the question. And I think that the level of specificity that this report will provide with regard to those numbers and exactly what does that mean. If we, and this is a difficult one, and Mr. Tyler, I know, knows this as well as anyone, as the ranking senior member of the committee, that to say that the deficit is this much creates a fiction of some kind, because you are in some ways proving a negative. That if we were to say, the term that is often used during the budget season is the, quote, level services budget. It's in some ways disingenuous for two reasons. On one hand, the school department knows that there will be some level of savings that are not yet, that we cannot, or you cannot yet responsibly identify, and therefore we cannot be projected with any degree of certainty. On the other hand, if the whole exists and it's compounding year in and year out, and the cost of a 21st education is accelerating in a way that perhaps a 20th education did not, then we are creating a false sense of security when we talk about a, quote, level services budget. And so that creates a real difficulty in terms of pegging a number. But to Mr. Tyler's point, this report will not have value if we're not able to add that level of specificity that at times has been missing. And so I would say, yes, it needs to identify the numbers, but it also has to explain what the numbers mean. What does life in the Attleboro Public Schools, and therefore life in the community of Attleboro look like if we are not living with this problem year in and year out, and it doesn't continue to grow?
Thank you.
So yes is the short answer, but I know that you wouldn't want to hear a short answer, so that's why.
Thank you.
Mr. Geddes?
Thank you also, to echo the gratitude everybody else has shared. Thank you guys for your dedication, and whether it's retired educators, current educators, thank you for coming back and dedicating yourselves to this. Mr. Murphy, you said that this is not an override committee, but I think that's going to be the initial perception of this, is that they're going to, this is advocacy for 2.5. And I brought that up in the spring, not as a resolution to the school budgetary issue, but under the concept of, this is a $6 million City of Attleboro budget deficit this year. This is only going to address the school issue. There, and the other departments that would fall under a 2.5 that would be greatly benefited from an override, obviously aren't in our purview, very thankfully. But something that some folks that I've talked to about the possibility of an override, their biggest concern is either ultimately that they want to make sure that if you're going to raise my taxes, I want to know that you're spending it properly. I don't have kids in the school. Why would I vote for an override for the schools? And again, it's more than just the schools that would need the override. And the idea that came from that discussion was an independent evaluation of everything across the city. Do you know of any research that has been done for municipalities that say, for a city of 40 to 45,000 residents that have 6,000 students in their schools, this is how many teachers you should have. This is how many police officers you should have on the beat. This is how many firefighters you should have. This is how much money should be going towards your water and wastewater departments. Do you know of anyone that could facilitate that? Is that going to be part of your research?
Yeah. Well, so what I would say is this: I think if we look at Section 2 of Part 1 as to why this matters for the community, and I think that speaks to the concern that you're raising. That another hypothesis that we will seek to flesh out and to provide evidence for is the impact that investment in education can have on the community at large. That yes, this group that is focused on the problem facing this organization that you oversee will seek to address the issue facing this particular organization. It will be done in the context of trying to understand what benefits resolving this problem would yield for the community at large, and I think that would go to the issues that you're addressing, because we do need to get a sense not just what the Attleboro Public Schools would look like in an environment in which this issue is resolved, but also how would the community at large benefit, and that goes to public safety, it goes to elder services, it goes to infrastructure, it goes to anything else you can. And I think to Mrs. Nelson talked about the comprehensive plan and how that's the comprehensive plan for the city of Attleboro, and the reason that that's in there. Well, why don't you can talk about what reason that's in there.
Yeah, well, and actually, I want to go back to the philosophy of what you were saying before about if you don't have children in the school system, why would you want to raise your taxes in order to support them? I always fall back on my father. He graduated from Attleboro High School in 1932. And when we grew up and we had our own kids, he would say to us, he said, I don't mind paying the taxes even though I don't have students in the school system right now, because when you girls were in school, somebody else was paying for your education. But it's just like saying, I don't mind my tax money going to the fire department, and I hope that I never have to call them to have them come and put out a fire at my house. But I know that as a community, we all need to work together, and we all benefit as a community from all those services that are provided. It just happens to be that the school department has a fairly large chunk of what that overall budget is, absolutely, without a doubt. But it's to the benefit of our entire community that we do invest in that education.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear because, we are not trying to be coy with the role that an override discussion will play in this report and in the discussion that will take place in the months ahead. this school district has laid off a double-digit number of employees for the past 3 years. You, as was presented to you earlier this calendar year, have seen a reduction in services that benefit students for close to 10 years. There's a problem here, and it's growing, and we can't be afraid to discuss each option and to understand its implications. However, for each of these remedies, whether it's lobbying and advocating before the state government in the hopes of a resolution to the funding formula, whether it's essentially implementing a plan of wage stagnation that essentially levels personnel costs to the degree legally possible over an extended period of time in order to try to bridge that gap, whether it's revenue generating measures like some of the ones that have been touched upon here, all of those things need to be on the table, including, as I said earlier, the possibility that we as a community and as a school system may need to essentially revise our expectations as to the role the school system will play. So we're going to have an honest discussion about that, and nothing's going to be eliminated from that discussion because it's politically too sensitive, or because it's something that 30 years ago somebody said, well, that wouldn't happen here. I think that all of us have a responsibility to take account for the time period in which we're living, and imprisoning ourselves through conventional wisdom or conventional thinking is, I think, problematic, and I think that's part of what our goal will be, to transcend that to the degree we can.
Thank you.
Skills?
Mine isn't so much a question as a comment. The amount of work that appears is going to go into this report and that everybody's going to be doing, I really hope that the community takes part in the public forums that will be taking place, providing their input. This will be a great opportunity for people who have been paying attention and want to get involved, for them to be getting involved. So we'll help in making sure that communication gets out, making sure that it's time.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd also say that, it's important that the public knows and realizes from the beginning that those opportunities are coming to discuss this, because what I don't want to see happen is that, the report be debated or, brought down or talked up before it's even produced, before we can actually speak about the report. So I think it's important that, what we're doing tonight is introducing the idea of what the report will be, the work that's going to be done over the next several months. The work hasn't been done yet, so there's no report to debate. There won't be a report to debate for several months.
I'll just, and I think that's an excellent point, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask that we not be commended nor disparaged for the work that we have not yet done. And oftentimes, and I think that I'll just leave it at that. That this is going to take time. It's going to be a lot of hard work, and we're going to get that work done. We're going to incorporate participation in public feedback to the greatest extent possible, and we're going to try to articulate potential ways forward. And what I would say about this also is that, as we've said many times tonight, it's been said by the school committee that this is going to be difficult. It is going to be difficult. If someone tells you that the financial problems plaguing the Attleboro Public Schools are a simple problem with an easy solution, you can pretty much count on one of two things. Either the person talking to you does not understand the problem, or the person talking to you does not want you to understand the problem. And depending on the audience, that can go either way. But there's nothing easy about this. There's nothing simple about this. And as I think we were saying earlier, that it's going to take some time. It's going to take work, but we will get there, and we'll certainly report back in due time to keep you updated as to our progress. Is that good? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just add one quick comment. And if I was sitting across the room, I'd probably want to kill me for saying this, but this school committee and its school administration are serving in a time that is extraordinarily difficult, and I know there are moments that are frustrating, and I know there are moments that are exhausting, but I did just want to say that as a member of the community, the leadership that you've shown as the governing body of the school system, and Mr. Sawyer and his team, as they've come on board in recent months, have, in my view, provided exemplary public service to the community. So I just want to thank you for that. And don't stay here too late tonight.
Thank you all, and thank you again to your members that aren't here today. We look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all. That's all.
Going to move back up our agenda now, and I'm excited to reintroduce our new Student Advisory Council student representatives. They were introduced to us in the late spring, early summer. Allie DeRose and Harry Lancaster, welcome. I think you picked a good, well, you didn't pick, but I think you looked into a good meeting to start with, because that was a an important discussion and a lively discussion. So welcome. We look forward to having you here for the rest of the year. And I will turn it over to the two of you for your Around Attleboro Public Schools report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay. You want to sit in those chairs? Would that be easier? Could we sit in those
Yeah,
chairs?
you can move that shit. Yeah, absolutely.
Move over.
Okay, so one thing that Harry and I are setting forth this year that I think you've seen at previous school committee meetings is the Around Attleboro Public Schools. So whether it's every meeting or every other, depending on what's going on, we're going to just briefly talk about what's going on in elementary, middle, and high schools in the upcoming month.
All right. So we're honored to be kept in the administrative loop, and this is our presentation to keep you guys into our loop and what's going on at the schools. So first thing on the PowerPoint is curriculum night for the elementary schools, which is an open house that's on September 22nd. Parents go, the families go, walk around the school, meet teachers. Just a basic open house.
The same thing's going on in the middle schools on September 14th. So again, meet teachers, see what they're doing in the classrooms, get a vibe of the school.
And then on September 21st, at the high school, we have back to school night, which is essentially the roles of the parents and the roles of the students switch. Each parent goes to their student's advisory, gets their schedule, and then they proceed to go through each classroom, meet the teacher, walk the halls, along with all the other parents, while the students are lining the hallways and directing parents to where they need to go. So that's kind of a different style open house, but it's definitely eye-opening for a lot of parents that don't really know what's going on in the schools on the school day for their kids.
Okay, so we have an ACE-PAC meeting on September 29th at Hyman Fine Elementary School at 6:30 p.m. And then another big thing that we're focusing on this year is the second annual Blue Pride Palooza. So, and that's October 29th. So as many of you may have heard, last year's Blue Pride Palooza had raised $50,000. And that $50,000 was crucial for the high school simply because we got Chrome carts from it. So even though we already have about 5 or 6 computer labs in the school, we have 1,700 students. And as you guys know, the internet is just becoming such a good learning portal, and teachers really want to focus on, writing essays, whether it be on Google Docs instead of doing it in, in your own handwriting and stuff like that. So the Chrome carts are essential for student learning. So the Blue Pride Palooza is a way that students can have access to more resources, and it's just an amazing thing. So yeah, you should go.
Yeah,
Well, I think Mr. Geddes wanted to make a comment.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to ask, do you have, because the Palooza was a fantastic event last year, what is the because tickets are on sale now, where can folks buy the tickets? I don't know if
that's a question for Mr. Rooney.
We're lucky enough he's in the back.
AHSBPAC.com.
AHSBPAC.com?
Yep.
Excellent, thank you, sir.
All right. Just to touch on the Chrome cards a little bit, from my experience with them, it really is so great to be able to bring the computers into the classroom and not have to go down to a computer lab. And it's nice, you sign them out, the teachers make sure that everybody handles them responsibly, and you really get some some efficient learning done. You can have a paper going, and you can have the research going in 2 different tabs, and it really makes the classroom a more effective place to get learning done.
And they're fast.
Yeah, they're fast, definitely. All right, so this year, these are the SAC initiatives for this coming school year. So we have support for PBIS and the Pride 5 initiative. So last year, we had the Pride initiative, which is personal responsibility is developed every day. And amidst all the chaos that's going on with the deficit, Attleboro High School students and faculty are looking to expand that horizon with the Pride 5 initiative, which is personal responsibility,
Respect.
respect,
Individuality.
determination, and excellence. So everybody's working to keep the spirits up in the school. I mean, it's so easy to look at the numbers and say the school year is going to be rough this year, but you can't forget that we're still going to school every day. We still have classes, and we have bigger classes, but classes nonetheless. So it's definitely important to keep the morale up at the school.
Another initiative that we're planning on working on is eliminating styrofoam products from our school. So styrofoam products are known to contain a carcinogen, which is known as polystyrene, and it is cancerous. It can lead to cancer, I should say. It's not cancerous. And it also can cause things like heart disease and other terrible, side effects and stuff. This initiative has actually been set forth and approved by New York City schools, Orange County, California schools, so that's like Los Angeles, and then I believe in Kansas City, Kansas. So there's a couple big cities that have banned styrofoam products because they are very harmful to not just the environment, but to health. So that's one thing that we want to set forth and maybe take it on a bigger scale eventually.
Is that something you want to do just at the high school level or throughout the district?
Throughout the
Yeah,
district.
throughout the district. And might we add that it is a contract year for our food supply provider. So we're hoping that they'll be a little bit more willing to work with us on that aspect to hopefully keep the contract going. And then the last initiative that we have is we're pushing for guided learning blocks at the high school. Like we said, there's a lot of kids, and this year especially, there's big classes, and there's a lot to get done, not only in the classroom, but after school, athletics, any club that we're in, and we think that it'd be a good use of our energy to invest in a way to figure out how students can free up some time to organize themselves and get the schoolwork done if need be, and it also could be a way to increase student involvement in the school. I mean, we have the privilege of being in the SAC because we have, ultimately, it comes down to we have rides to the high school to get the student council meetings, and we have the time to get to the meetings outside of school and after school, whenever it may be. But not every student has that privilege. So it could be very beneficial to not only the academics of students, but also to their involvement in the community and moving forward as a public school system in general. And
Anyone have
that's
any
it.
questions?
That concludes our slideshow.
Thank you very much. That was a
Thank you,
great
Mr.
report.
Chairman.
Look forward to seeing and hearing more as the year goes on. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Next on our agenda, we have the minutes from our August 15th, 2016 meeting. Have a
So moved.
motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to our consent agenda. Motion to deem the following items as surplus. I am going to actually skip that, and we'll do that one last, because I think that requires Mr. Furtado. Motion to accept the donation in
Not there.
the, yeah, we'll do it at the end. Motion to accept the donation in the amount of $241 from the Whitefield Foundation to the class of 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept the donation in the amount of $200 from an anonymous donor to the athletic user fee line.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $1,000 from the Blue Pride Ambassadors Club for the following: $300 to the athletic department, $400 to the art department, $100 to the Leo Club, $100 to the Model UN, $100 to the Interact Club.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept 6 cases of paper from an anonymous donor to Thatcher.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept 5 cases and 8 reams of paper from an anonymous donor to Hyman Fine.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to deem the following items as surplus. Mr. Furtado? It says vehicles and then it says your name by it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Got 2 vehicles that are no longer operational. The Kia Sedona from 2003 was most recently used for delivering items across the district by the courier. That van has broken down numerous times in the past year, and most recent time was the last time it was going to be allowed to break down by the mechanic. He deems it unrepairable. The $2,000 Ford Econoline van was one of the first vehicles that was part of the Sodexo contract. And when they sign new contracts, part of that contract is to supply the district with a new van. This van had a corrosion problem around the base of the body that could not be welded back to the chassis and is not drivable.
Thank you. Do you have a motion?
Just
So
a
moved.
comment.
Oh.
Is it-
Well, why don't we do the, Mr. Tyler, why don't we do the motion first and then we'll do this?
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Yeah, Mr. Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Isn't the motion supposed to have added word to it too? Aren't we supposed to give this recommendation to the city council? Aren't they the ones who have the final approval?
Once, the process would be, once the school committee approves it, these are surplus items that goes to the municipal council for their vote as well. Once the council votes, all of the relevant documentation and paperwork is given to the purchasing agent for the city, who lists the items on a thing called Gov Surplus, which is basically an open auction, so people could purchase one of these for parts or whatever, put a bid in, and the highest bid gets the item. All of the money goes back to the city's general fund.
Mr. Geddes?
Are either of these vehicles being replaced? And probably a better question, do either of these vehicles need to be replaced? And if so, what is the plan for that?
It's a good question. One of them, for sure. Right now, maintenance has two other vans that have been supplied by Sodexo for use, so they're not being impacted by this necessarily. The courier is. So, as the student representatives accurately pointed out, it's a big contract year, so Sodexo's contract expires at the end of this year, and with the going out to bid in the spring, there'll be a requirement for a van then, which will replace the courier van.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Furtado. Next, we'll move on to our business agenda. Item number 2 is Commonwealth Charter Schools resolution. As we're all too aware, Attleboro, as well as many districts throughout this Commonwealth, are facing financial difficulties as a result of many factors. One factor that's been discussed here on occasion and elsewhere as well is the impact that state funding for charter schools has on funding of public schools and funding of Attleboro public schools in particular. So we have a resolution that is against lifting the cap on Commonwealth charter schools. So it would be a resolution to vote no on ballot question number 2. I'll read the resolution in a minute, but a couple things I just want to point out. This resolution does not take position on charter schools, charter schools in general. whether or not charter schools should be in existence in Massachusetts, their purpose, their worth. That is not what this is about. This is simply about the financial impact charter schools have in Attleboro, specifically what this lifting the cap on charter schools would have on Attleboro and worsening the financial situation we find ourselves in. So the resolution before you tonight states as follows. Whereas free public schools available to all students, regardless of income, ability, need, or English language proficiency, are foundational to our democracy, and whereas all of our students deserve high-quality public schools that teach the whole child, providing enrichment and addressing social and emotional needs in addition to core academic subjects, and whereas local accountability for our public schools is necessary to ensure that schools are responsive to the needs of their communities, and whereas Attleboro was assessed $2.8 million for Commonwealth charter schools in fiscal year 17, and public school districts across the state are collectively losing more than $408 million this year alone, a reduction in funds that undermines the ability of districts to provide all students with the educational services to which they are entitled, and whereas lifting the cap on charter schools would greatly worsen the fiscal problems of the Attleboro public schools and the public school districts throughout the Commonwealth. Therefore, be it resolved that the Attleboro School Committee opposes lifting the cap on Commonwealth charter schools and is opposed to ballot question number 2. Again, this takes the position of no on ballot question number 2, is against lifting the cap on Commonwealth charter schools, and takes that position because of the fiscal impact it has on the Attleboro Public School District. So at this point, I'd be looking for a motion for me to sign this resolution on behalf of the school committee.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Larson?
How many students do we have from Attleboro that go to a charter school? Do we know that number roughly?
It's 300 something, isn't it?
I thought it was 320.
On any given day, we can give you an accurate number, but it's in the
Low
300s.
300s.
Low 300? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, Superintendent Sawyer is going to give us an update on the 2016-2017 academic year opening.
Thank you. So, as we started the meeting this evening, certainly the 16-17 school year is one that faces many challenges. The budget situation that overshadowed the opening this July it certainly casts a dark cloud over the district in moments, but I am very proud to say that I believe that we are persevering through that, and we have started the school year with the focus on meeting the needs of students and the focus on learning that the students of Attleboro deserve and that we're required to provide. We are proud as a team that we have been able to open school under these conditions in the way that we have. We obviously are dealing with less staff, with new policies, increased fees. There are lots of implications to the context that we're operating in, and through it all, we were able to get 6,000 kids in here with relatively few problems, and get them going on to what we believe will be a successful school year for them in spite of it all. And real credit goes to everyone in the organization, whether we're talking about the support staff that worked hard this summer to get us ready, or our educators who are really committed to the students of Attleboro and come every day, even though that things have gotten a little bit harder for them this year. They're really intent on delivering the best educational experiences that they can, and it's really something else to see us rise to meet this challenge. I think we're all very proud of how these first few weeks have gone. Now, certainly, anytime you go from 6,000 kids at home to being at school, that's a logistical challenge, and one that has not been without its issues. We are working through various things here and there, but the scope of our problems in comparison to previous years we think is actually less. than what we've been dealing with. That's certainly been our perception and the reports that we're getting. So while I don't want to give the impression that we haven't had any issues, I think the fact that they are fewer than normal speaks to how well prepared we were, and a good sign that we are off to a good start. At this time, I'd like members of my team to say a little bit about their particular areas and how things are going for those.
Great, thank you. We started out this school year with 2 professional days, one at the building level and one at the district level. We were able to provide teachers with some specific instruction and guidance and material that they can use immediately in their daily instruction to start off the year. Currently, right now, teachers are in the process of setting up their routines and their daily classroom culture, and learning is well underway. We have also started the process of organizing and preparing for the after-school, middle school programs, so that is clearly underway as well.
We'll go with Ms. Medeiros. We'll save Mr. Furtado for last.
Thank you, sir.
So good evening. We're building off of what Laurie said. Our special educators have also stepped up to the challenge. Certainly, we had some last-minute resignations that we've worked through. They're either, we're at the final stages of interviewing, or they're in the personnel pipeline. So we do have a couple of openings that have been a challenge for us. Our school psychologist position at Willett and Thatcher, a lack of applicants. A number of districts are also seeing that as a challenge. We have a contractor kind of in the guidelines in case we need them, but we are continuing to interview and have been able to use our psychologists in district to provide supports as needed right now as we've opened. Our biggest challenge right now has been to fill our district behavior specialist position. That continues to be a challenge. We continue to post and hope for the best, and we'll probably look at a contractor for that as well. Our related service folks are working through getting their schedules, getting out services. I was up at the high school today, and our speech therapist there was actually providing services individual and in group, so that's coming along much quicker than years past. Thank you.
If it pleases you, Mr. Chair, I think we should let Mr. Furtado sort of bleed his comments into his transportation report as well.
3 and 4 together. Here you go, Mr. Furtado.
All right. Just a few things. As you pointed out, as the superintendent pointed out, that we did have some bumps at the beginning with food service. We resolved some issues regarding barbecues and the serving of cookies in the elementary schools. On the technology front, we completed the Wi-Fi projects on time. The schools are operating with systems that operate. We still have some issues with the operators who sometimes are not quite sure on how to access the system or how to configure their devices to properly access the system. But the systems themselves are up and running and doing a great job. Facilities, we've had some plumbing issues at the high school that have required the buildings to be shut down at night for that work. And we've had an extremely active and constant MSBA presence to do the evaluation of this building, requiring staff time to accompany the folks in looking at everything about the building. It's been pretty extensive and pretty intense. On the transportation front, all of the bus passes have been passed out. We have been taking attendance daily in trying to figure out who does belong on the bus and who does not. We've been trying to be very human about the folks we find on the bus who don't belong there, and trying to provide notification to parents to make sure that stops going forward. We have approximately half dozen buses that are genuinely at their legal limit in terms of students on them. At some point, we will review those routes and see where we can make some trade-offs to relieve that pressure. And as the committee knows, we've emerged from the frozen period, so we will begin the evaluation of some concerns parents have expressed. We started that process today, and we'll continue that over the next 2 weeks to resolve those matters.
Any questions? Mr. Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leave it to Mr. Sawyer, the understatements of the year over here, because you guys you did a phenomenal job with the school open, you and your administration. You, under the financial burdens that we put on, I think it was a great school open. We're always gonna have a couple kinks here and there, we've always had those. With the budget that we were given, I expected it 100-fold. So that's due to proper managing and having, your team do what they're supposed to be doing and looking at it. So, I mean, I'd say in one aspect, maybe people are saying, well, geez, look how good they did without that money. And we know what the impact is. It's more on the classroom, the students are getting. So again, I think a huge understatement by Mr. Sawyer, typical Mr. Sawyer, underestimating his abilities about, doesn't want to, I should say, put those out in the public spectrum. But, you and your administrative team did a great job, and can't thank you enough. I mean, I think you had a wonderful school open, and I know you'll work the other little problems out as they come. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Geddes?
Mr. Sawyer, with our informational packet, we got an enrollment report of new registrations for the course of the summer. That reported 292 total students. Is that a net number, or is that just incoming, doesn't take into account students that we may have lost to other?
Yeah, that's a gross number.
Gross number, okay. Any idea how many students we lost to other schools for whatever reason?
No, that gets sorted out a little bit later through the process.
That's what I thought.
By regulation, we can't drop anybody for 15 days. So, it won't be until basically August 1st that we really
October
know.
1st.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, October 1st, yes.
Okay. And it also mentioned school and grade levels that are at student capacity. Thatcher is obviously busting at the seams.
It is.
But across the district, kindergarten and 5th grade at every school is at capacity. Is that, I'm just wondering, is that a space issue or a staffing issue?
It's a staffing issue.
Okay.
We have good news, due to some moving around that we did to solve some other problems. We've actually made the kindergarten situation better since I last reported. So we've opened up some kindergarten seats. So we are no longer at capacity kindergarten. We have some seats in kindergarten now, as a result of moving some things around. So that problem, we're hoping is going to be in a better situation by the end of the week. 5th grade is right now our biggest concern.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And to echo what Mr. Tyler said, I think for those of us who've been on the committee before, this is certainly the smoothest school opening that I've been a part of, and given the circumstances surrounding the opening, a new team, budget problems, change in transportation policies, big thanks go out, and congratulations to the administration. Obviously, it's not that there were no issues, it's just that the issues were much less than years past, so congratulations and thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Sawyer, MSBA Attleboro High School project update?
Yes. So, Mr. Rooney, you want to join us for this? You can stay, Mr. Tyler. You're an integral part of this whole thing.
That's true anyway.
As we discussed at our last meeting, you included in your packet was the working draft of the educational program. The educational program is an important document that is used in the design process as part of the feasibility study under the MSBA process. That's it, not to be too technical. It is a description of both the school as it exists and as we wish it to be in future context. This document is absolutely a work in progress. I want to thank Mr. Rooney and his team for getting us to a place where we have something to work from. Quite a bit of work went into getting us to this point. But this was to just prepare us for the next stage in the process. Next week, around 48 people, a combination of students, educators, administrators, city officials, and community representatives will get together, generously hosted by Sensata, to be led by a renowned national educational consultant, Dr. Frank Locker, and he will lead us through a process over 3 days next week in which we come to some conclusions about what should Attleboro High School look like, both in terms of what our community is about, but also about in terms of the trends in education and how do we plan for the school of the future. That process should generate considerable information in terms of our own thinking about what that draft that you received should look like in the end. So we anticipate that there's going to be quite a bit added to it and some significant revisions made to it as we go through that process and as a result of that work. From there, we will then make those revisions and bring this back to you as a proposal for consideration through the Operations and Infrastructure Subcommittee, or Facilities and Infrastructure? Is that what we call it, Mr. Furtado?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Excuse me, I got too many groups with different names. So that we're hoping for a final resolution. I believe that we need to get this thing approved by the school committee before Thanksgiving. That's really our deadline. So we'll get it to the subcommittee in time so that it can have its say, and then we can get it up to the full committee for approval. And again, that draft we anticipate will be significantly different than the one that you have. But before we could, have the work that we do next week, influence the final product, we had to have a starting place, which is what we wanted to make sure was in your hands in the first place. So that's why we've submitted that. That's where we are in the process. Mr. Furtado, Mr. Rooney, do either of you have anything you want to add to what I've already stated?
I think one thing that is of note is, if you notice in the introduction, that your predecessors on the previous school committee, which many of you served on, commissioned a flagship task force for the high school, where we were able to convene a smaller group that represented various constituencies that Mr. Sawyer outlined earlier, students, educators, community members, and we looked at short-term solutions and potential long-term solutions for Attleboro High School, and that was a nice baseline for us when we started to put together the educational program. And I appreciate Mr. Sawyer's praise, but he worked with us in concert to be able to present this, again, very preliminary draft to you tonight.
Furtado, you always wax so poetically about the importance of this document. Why don't you share some
I'm
of
gonna
your thoughts?
translate your opening statement, actually.
Oh, translate.
The architectural firm, as you would imagine, when they start proposing ideas for the building, those ideas cannot be disconnected with the vision for our curriculum and our educational goals going forward. So this document is that foundation, and MSB is going to be looking for that. So when they say, the 4-story glass-cased science labs with the phasers inside, they're gonna try to look for how that ties back to the school committee and school district's intent for the high school curriculum and education going forward. So this document is the foundation for the physical structure that's going to emerge from this work.
Can
Mrs. Gills?
So based on that information, when I looked at it originally, and I did notice in the special education realm that 12 plus was not singled out. Do we really think the 12 plus is program that we have and the location that it's in and all that is ideal for where it should be? Or, so, all right, so that's why I was surprised that it wasn't like in that area along with everything else.
Again, I think there are a lot of things like that that really haven't been teased out.
Yeah, okay.
You know, what you have in front of you is just a very rough sketch to start from. And as those kinds of ideas come to the surface, we will be able to add that level of detail, which is what the document is absolutely lacking at this point.
Okay, all right.
And if I could just piggyback that, I think that some of the transition that's been in the special education department over the last couple of years, Ms. Medeiros is, I think, the fourth director that I've worked with in my 4+ years here, is kind of limited us a little bit as well in terms of what we wanted to put in print. So we're looking forward to working with not only this entire visioning team, but also under her leadership to see how best to serve the students in all special education programs, specifically 12+.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our business agenda. We'll move on to our subcommittee reports, and Mrs. Scales has a report on the policy and personnel meeting of August 29th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, at the meeting, we discussed the possible updates to policy JFE1, which is proof of residency requirements, after we received feedback from DESE. But it was decided that we would wait until we had a final and definitive acceptance of the policy by DESE before making any more changes. Next, we had an overview of policy BGC, policy review and revision. The superintendent had indicated that this is something he would like to focus on, and he wanted feedback on how best to go about this so as to keep the policies up to date. We spoke about reaching out to Mass to see how other districts are accomplishing this. I did reach out to them, to the district rep, and I will follow up with him. We agreed that the central office team will look over the policy book and pick a section to start with, and we will go from there. Next, we discussed the need to enact a school meal policy. Over the past 3 years, we have had to cover over close to $63,000 in deficits in the school lunch account with money from the operating budget. Even with repeated attempts by the principals to recoup payments, our district is having to endure serious losses. As a district, we can no longer operate in this fashion. There are many other districts experiencing the same hardships and all are implementing such policies. The policy before you has been vetted by all the school principals. Does the administration care to add anything?
No, we feel that the discussion was robust. There was great consideration given to different grade levels and the implications of that. And as the chair of the policy committee is pointing out, that this is not unique to Attleboro and has been addressed by many districts in a much more draconian way. We feel this is a nice balance between the operating needs of the district and the sensitivity to the situations in the community.
I need to make a motion first before we go. Yeah. All right, so before discussion, I will make a motion to approve policy EFD, pricing and payment of food services.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any comments?
During the discussion, we talked, Ms. Scales, you said it was $53,000 over the last,
Like 63,000?
over the last few years. Prior to 3 years ago, about 2013 or so, that was typically single-digit thousands, like 4,000, I think you said?
4 to 6, yeah, was a typical number.
Which I think is why this hasn't been here before, but I just wanted to put that background into context. Thank you.
Mr. Loft?
I may have missed it in the presentation, but how are we going to communicate this with the parents so that when this potentially raises itself up to a certain point, they're going to be aware of this?
With a policy change that would affect families this way, we would certainly send a written correspondence home. We were also going to post this in the school lunch area so they'd be aware of these policies.
But it will go home with the students, like
Yeah.
elementary school students and middle school.
Yeah, we'll email the policy.
Yeah, so further background on Mr. Getty said, years ago, the problem was much smaller, and, I think a lot of us remember the incident at, however many years ago it was now, that, where students were not given lunch without warning, essentially, and is often the case. I think the situation we find ourselves in now is a result of going way too far in the other direction to make up for mistakes that were made. And what I think this policy attempts to do, and I believe it does well, is strikes the middle ground of providing some leeway to families, notice to families. Kids in grades K through 6 will never not be given a meal. But at the same time, it's fiscally responsible. So I think it strikes that middle ground that oftentimes gets lost when immediately responding to a crisis.
Pretty much, the chairman hit on what I was going to bring up, is that we went out of the way to ensure that in this policy there is wording to the effect that no student is going to go without lunch, that the issues that we've had in the past will not happen again. So I thought that was important to note.
And I see here that it says it's recommended that there's a minimum balance of 10 school lunches for staff and students. And just using my daughter as an example, in middle school, that'd be like asking the parent to maintain a minimum balance of $50. And I think that might be a little bit much, especially in this day and age where families are struggling, especially with increased fees. And I didn't know if that was something we could look into.
Okay.
Mr. Fowler, what is the price of lunch?
Below $3, it would be high 20s if it were 10 lunches. It's not to maintain, it would be, we can demarcate for people who use our portal and pay online. We can provide them with notice to say your account is getting low. That could be at 10 lunches, that could be at 5 lunches, that could be at 0.
And that is set by the parent.
That's set by the parent.
Yeah, we use that feature ourselves, but our daughter is, which is fine with us, adamant on having breakfast and lunch there. So it runs us about $5.10 a day, so or a little over $100 a month. So for us to maintain like an extra $50 just for that cushion is like, it's okay for us, but for other people it may not be.
And I think that's why it was just a recommendation. I think just to cover, just so that there aren't so many, people coming in and, going to zero balances. I think that was the reasoning behind the recommendation. But I understand where you're coming from.
Sure, but 2 meals a day, that's, you only need 5 days. For someone with 1 meal a day, it would be 10 days. Either way, I think it's significantly less than 50.
Is there a way we could, and they also charge a fee to put money onto is there a way we could ask them to waive that, or?
So I just emailed Mr. Furtado on that today.
Okay.
And at least reduce it, but that's something that, again, we are having a new contract, and perhaps it's something we can look at.
We have a few avenues. When My School Bus was established, they actually weren't sure of the volume of business, and as a result, tabbed the fee pretty high at the beginning, which is kind of counterintuitive because you want people to participate, so you would expect them to go with a low fee. That didn't happen. So we negotiated with them in the middle of the contract to identify the actual costs associated with the contract and reduce the fee to that number, which covers the cost of the contract. We have an option. We have 2 other things we can do at this point. One is absorb some of that cost through the lunch account, or which is somewhat artificial, but understandably the fee is a concern. Or continue to negotiate based on the fact that we're trying to expand the use of the portal beyond lunch. So we're going to do student activities, athletic fees, transportation fees, and given those activities, perhaps the fee can be adjusted for that.
Further reduced.
Well, for example, like what we do is we send a check with our daughter to cover either 2 weeks or the month, depending upon when she needs it, how much she eats. But, And that, with that, they don't charge us a fee. So that's something for parents to think about too, just sending in a check.
But yeah, there's real sensitivity about the fee, because we'd like people to use this service, but to get more use, we need to reduce the fee.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it's a wonderful service.
And just for clarification, the fee is a flat fee, it's not a percentage of what is being put onto the account.
I believe it is a percentage.
It's a flat fee every time you put money on.
I'm sorry, it's a fixed fee, so it's
So it doesn't matter if you're
regressive.
putting $50 or $100 on.
Right, it's regressive to smaller deposits.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, but if it's a family that can only
Right.
afford to do it weekly, it will affect them more than if someone
Right.
did it monthly.
Right.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. The policy will be tabled for 2 weeks, and that will allow time for public comment. Lastly, we discussed the need for a policy around the use of the high school concession stand. The policy will coincide with the existing use of the building policies already on file. Thanks to the administration and to Mr. Hool, the athletic director, in developing a policy that keeps fees low while still providing for the upkeep of the structure. Would the administration like to add anything?
Just that we think we found that proper balance. We're pretty excited. We think that the fee structure will allow community usage while still helping to collect the fees to maintain the facility moving forward.
I make a motion to approve policy KFB R2, use of Attleboro High School concession stand as presented.
So moved.
Any comments? Mrs. Strauss?
I know that part of our discussion during policy meeting was the need for, I guess it would be an exhibit to this policy, that would be the
User agreement.
The user agreement. Any idea about when we should expect that to come?
Probably another week. We got a bunch, and we're trying to, craft something that's comprehensive.
We're hoping for the next policy meeting.
Great, thank you.
I also want to make note that the subcommittee did ask the administration to also look into the public use of the track. It was agreed upon that we will be expecting something in place by the spring. Any other comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This will also be tabled for 2 weeks. In addition to the last policy, we have one last bookkeeping motion to approve. I motion to designate the current policy KFBR regulations and fees for the use of Attleboro school buildings as KFBR1 to align with the addition of KFBR2.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And that's it for policy and personnel, and the next meeting is potentially scheduled for October 3rd.
October what?
3rd?
Third?
No? Yes? Yeah, close. Around this.
I don't, no, I
Say
don't
there's
think
something with sooner,
Yeah,
one
we
sooner
go
than
in
that.
September.
September 19th.
Okay, September 19th.
All right.
I just
Soon.
skipped right over that, didn't I?
Wishful thinking, Mrs. Scales.
I know, I guess.
Thank you. Mr. Larson, Finance and Budget Subcommittee report for September 7th meeting?
Yes, we met September 7th. Mr. Furtado went through a general discussion, budget, the financial reports, transportation update, MSBA update. We did not have a quorum, so we didn't take any votes on any actions. We did have a guest, Councilwoman Hall. She's been attending our meetings somewhat regularly, trying to educate herself on the ways of the school district, so we've been helping her through that. And we will be meeting again next month. I don't have the date in front of me, but it'll go out in an email, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Next, we have open forum. This is the time when members of the public may address the school committee. Open forum is not a time for committee members to engage in a dialogue with members of the public. Guidelines for open forum are available to you. Please know that we are interested in what you have to say, but we cannot respond without background information on your issue. Please come forward and state your name and address if you'd like to address the committee at open forum. There being no one, that will close open forum. A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
for tomorrow? I know Rehoboth is
Here?
$1.95.
For this?
Rehoboth is only $1.95.